What's going on, guys? Andrew Newberg getting back here, and today we're going to be talking about some Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains episode 87. Now, this is the second episode detailing the duel between Spectre and Lightning. And last we saw Spectre, he had actually pulled out a pretty good turn of the tides within this duel. Lightning had set up a extra link on his side of the field, as well as having judgment arrows, I was about to call them lightning arrows, set up on his board, making for a pretty intimidating board within the context of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains as an anime. But Spectre manages to steal away judgment arrows, and then goes on to create his own extra link, and is actually the character to be able to hold the title of being the first one to create what they refer to as a complete extra link within the Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains anime. And now what do they mean by that? Essentially, it's Spectre manages to occupy all 5 of his monster zones, in addition to the 2 extra deck monster zones, and have all of those monsters co-linked. On top of that, to add some icing to the cake, he had judgment arrows active at the same time, and several continuous spells on his field as well, making for what was overall a very intimidating board. Heck, a lot of the characters are even commenting he managed to do the thing that Revolver couldn't against Playmaker, and that was make the complete extra link. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say Spectre surpassed Revolver by any means, but even Revolver showed a smirk of approval at this, which I thought was a nice little character interaction. I think those were the things that this episode got right, for some of the smaller things, because the duel, while it did have the whole extra linking thing, that usually doesn't get me as excited as it used to in some of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows. It's sort of like, I've kind of seen you been there and done that with a lot of the duel drama. It doesn't surprise me as much as it used to, but, you know, don't let my negativity rain on your parade if you enjoy that type of thing. There were definitely some cool actions in there. It's just more so, I guess, having watched as much Yu-Gi-Oh! As I have over the past few years, some of the excitement has dropped a little bit for me in the dueling aspects of the show. So pressing forward from there, Spectre does end up losing, and now I was talking about how he had a really strong board here, and essentially he did. Problem with that was his board was more or less built like a house of cards, in that everything was linked together and everything was connected, and it was stable as long as the outside interference never got through. Problem was, Lightning found a way to get through. He removed the protection that Spectre had up on Judgment Arrows, thus allowing him to return Judgment Arrows to his own hand, and then Judgment Arrows was able to be destroyed. Spectre's board starts getting blown up, and then it's all downhill from there. So nothing too surprising there. I predicted going into this episode on several occasions that there was essentially no hope for Spectre to be able to win, which kind of stinks because I really enjoy watching his character on screen, and I think a lot of people are in consensus on that. And it feels like to some extent with this season in particular, they only kind of brought him on screen to use as a pivot character, which kind of stinks considering he had a lot of build up to his eventual dueling in Season 1, and when he did duel in Season 1, it felt like one of the more significant duels in that he beat Aoi, and then, yeah, he went on to lose to Playmaker, but they basically hold the right to the main protagonist losing to very special people, if at all, and I'd say at this point in Vrains, it's not looking like Playmaker is going to really lose. I think the closest thing we're going to have to a defeat is when Bowman was aware he could have beaten Playmaker, but just wanted to keep quote-unquote learning from him or something along those lines. But regardless, it kind of stinks to see Spectre disappear into data again, because that means he's probably done for this story arc, which means in terms of our sort of anti-hero types fighting alongside Playmaker, that basically just leaves Revolver. I thought the whole alliance and intermixing of the Knights of Hanoi and Playmaker's camp was really interesting, and while that is still going on, it kind of detracts from the fact a little bit in my eyes that it is just Revolver and not Spectre there to kind of complement him. Now, on the topic of these two, Revolver seems genuinely distraught to have seen Spectre lose. Normally, Revolver, at least from what I've seen in the past, seems to keep a very strong poker face, and I think this continues to show the subtle character development they've been weaving for him throughout this arc, whether it be the fact that he just took a loss to Soulburner outright and seemed to be doing his best to apologize indirectly to Soulburner for the events that essentially crippled his life within the Lost incident, all the way up to now when he's showing feelings towards Spectre and the fact that, you know, one of my teammates lost, this isn't just about the mission anymore, maybe I do care about these people, or when he's helping Playmaker out, showing more respect towards him, working towards everything here seems to show a little bit more acknowledgement of the Ignises as being closer to living beings, I should say. So with that being the case, it's cool to see Revolver's development here. This was a subtle writing aspect that they kind of threw in terms of his character that I liked a lot. In terms of Lightning, nothing too surprising, and most of the other characters are more or less going on in the background. Now, one detail is Lightning does keep the bird and frog, so that way he can keep using them as reporters, I guess. He seems to be a fan of this idea of using strategy to one by one clip off Playmaker's team, and then essentially allow the rest of the team to see their members go down. And from a demoralizing standpoint, that does make sense, especially if you're trying to take the maniacal villain approach to strategy. But you're also of the perspective of they're able to be there kind of quote-unquote in spirit to cheer people on. I know that was a theme that sort of went on a lot in Duel Monsters, like the original anime, but we don't see that quite as much in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! But I remember there were specific times where like Yugi was isolated from his friends. His villains would make a point of isolating him from his friends, but that their whole bond of friendship theme would keep them connected and everything else. So I don't know if we'll see any of that come into play here, but I guess it's not quite as necessary. I don't know. It would be kind of cool to see them do a little bit of a callback there. They've made a few callbacks to Duel Monsters already within this anime, with cards like Mirror Force popping back up. So I wouldn't say it's completely outside of the realm of possibilities, especially considering friendship has maintained a constant presence within Yu-Gi-Oh's themes throughout its entire lifespan and now its 6th anime. So with all that being said, guys, not a lot to really talk about in this episode and this time around. I mean, it was basically a pretty straightforward duel where I thought the results were relatively predictable. We had a little bit of cool extra link action going on from Spectre. So let's go ahead and talk about what might be on the horizons for the next episode. Now, this is a duel that, if it weren't for Spectre having been in the Lightning Spectre duel, I would probably have been looking forward to the most out of the past several that we've seen, because I feel like this is the one that's the most up in the air. And that's going to be Windy versus Soulburner. What I like about this duel is you're essentially putting two very strong supporting characters against each other, and that makes it so there's not one character that basically has immunity, because they eventually have to face the head of the other faction at some point, i.e. Lightning and Playmaker respectively. Versus with these two, because they are essentially supporting characters to each of their sides, either of them could end up losing this duel, and that adds a level of unpredictability to the duel that's coming up. And honestly, I think it would be kind of cool to see Windy maybe get a win, build him up a little bit, then maybe have him face Revolver again, and Revolver reminds him of how powerful he is. Maybe something happens between the two of them, or maybe Windy racks up a couple of wins and then goes on, or perhaps they keep it straightforward and give the win to Soulburner, and then maybe you have Lightning rack up several wins. Personally, the way I see this arc ending up playing out is it whittles down to maybe Revolver and Playmaker versus Bowman, or something along those lines. So for that to be the case, I feel like in this battle between the Ignises and the humans, we are going to have to see a number of characters get whittled down on either side first. And given how essentially Playmaker's team has more people right now, I feel like they're probably going to suffer more losses than wins for a while here. And I do definitely believe Revolver and Playmaker will be the last two standing. It's a common theme throughout Yu-Gi-Oh! To have your main protagonist and main rival end up fighting together at the most quintessential points of the plot. So this would go right alongside with that. Adding into the idea that Soulburner may lose, well, once more, he's not totally expendable, but he fills a role sort of similar to like Joey in Duel Monsters, and Joey lost plenty of times at critical moments, but he often managed to reveal key details to his allies or those types of things in the process. So I think it would be cool to see that come into play again. And similar things used to happen to characters like Ungenzaka in Arc 5, and freaking Kite or Shark and both of them, and Zexal, just to name a couple of characters off the top of my head, or Yusei ended up facing Zone in the end of 5Ds, those types of things in Yu-Gi-Oh! So it makes sense that's going to come down to Yusaku and most likely Bowman. I could see them end up going the route of Lightning, but still, the bigger idea I'm trying to get at here is we're going to see players being clipped from both sides, and Windy and Soulburner from a plot standpoint are both somewhat expendable at this point. I think they're writing it up to possibly have Windy have a win. That's kind of the route I would prefer, because I think it would make for a more interesting dual progression moving forward, rather than having Soulburner get the win and then most likely needing to leave lots of clipping off of people from Playmaker's side solely to Lightning, and then I guess eventually Bowman. Having Windy in the mix would add some more variety, but we'll just have to wait and see. So with all that being said, guys, that about concludes my thoughts on this episode. Like I said, I thought it was overall pretty straightforward. So as per usual, be sure to let me know your thoughts, comments, and theories in the comment section down below. Did you enjoy this episode, or did you find it to be kind of middle of the road the way I did? If you did enjoy the video, be sure to give me some constructive criticism down there as well. But if you did enjoy it, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time with some more Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains content.